Okay. That is everybody for now. Eduardo, do you want to kick us off?
Happy to do that. Let's start. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Eduardo Ortiz, and I work for the Institute for Disability Research Policy and Practice here at Utah State University. And I would like to welcome all of you to another community of practice organized by the Multicultural Disability Network and Training Multinet that seeks community integration and inclusion of people with disabilities from multicultural backgrounds. The intersectionality of disability and diversity includes many factors such as race, ethnicity, age, rural frontier geographies, gender and gender identification, among other cultural elements that creates a complex context that need to expanded conversations and learning opportunities such as this community of practice activity. As part of Multinet, we have developed at the IDRPP other products. I invite you to look at the link placed in the chat. Today, we have the privilege to have Sumiko Martinez, Dr. Sumiko Martinez and Shantel Bishoff. Sumiko Martinez is the former director of the Autism After 21 Utah project with Madison House Autism Foundation. She earned a BA in English from Westminster College and a master's degree and PhD in communication from the University of Utah. She is the proud co-author of Autism After 21, First Finding of Utah Review and Toolkits for Autism Inclusion and Salt Lake Valley Neuro-Inclusive Housing Market Analysis, Data-Driven, a Place in the World of Autistic Adults and Others with Neurodiversities. She has 18 plus years old of experience and has partnered with educators across Utah to increase equitable access to education. Also, we have Shantel Bishoff. Shantel is the Southern Utah Outreach Coordinator for the Madison House Autism Foundation. She received her master's degree in occupational therapy from Touro University in Nevada in 2015, where she implemented a strong focus within the neurodivergent and IDD community. She strived to always raise awareness, challenge stigma, and promote understanding and acceptance of neurodiversity. By providing education and outreach, Shantel aims to empower individuals and their support network to facilitate inclusivity and create environments that embrace diversity. Saying that, I would like also to mention some ground rules as reminders for this community of practice. First, I would like to invite the audience to introduce briefly in the chat so we could know a little bit about you, including your name, your organization that represent, and your role. Keep your mic mute during the presentation, and remember that this community of practice group is here to discuss, not to debate or argue. Also, any discussion should be focused and avoid side-deviated conversations. Keep an open mind and be open to learning something new. Be respectful of others. Listening is as important as talking and avoiding making assumptions. And please ask questions politely to gain understanding and clarity. Well, saying that, I welcome, and again, it is a privilege to have you both, Sumiko and Shantel. Thank you for being part of those efforts.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you. We're excited to be here. So welcome to everyone to our presentation on diverse partnerships and community outreach as a collaborative effort. First and foremost, we want to thank some of our key partners. There should be. Okay, so with our key partners, here they all are. We're so grateful for their support and continued efforts to help make our projects possible. We couldn't do it without them.
We're going to go through a few agenda or pre-meeting expectations just to set the scene. So we always do aim to be neuro-friendly. So please, if you would like to take a moment to find yourself whatever fidget items and or sensory comfort items will make this presentation more enjoyable for you. I was gonna say cameras off or on, but it looks like everyone's off, and that is a-okay. So whatever suits your needs. And then just a friendly reminder to, sit, stand, move, fidget, whatever support you need to enable you to be here and participate. During the presentation, we may ask some questions, and then of course you'll be able to type your answers into the chat. Or unmute your microphone to speak up. And last but not least, everything that we're going to be talking about here today is based on our experiences with outreach as part of the Autism After 21 Utah project. So it's essentially the very messy, very unpredictable real world applications of a vision of a neuro-inclusive world. So, we're glad that you're here with us on this journey through the real life messiness.
Yes.
Can
So
I interrupt? I don't see your slideshow. Are you currently sharing it?
I think I am currently sharing it, but maybe I'm just doing it wrong. One moment, please. And thank you for letting me know.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay. Can you see
There
it
we
now?
are. Yes.
Okay.
yep.
Let me
Thank you.
hop through to our slide. So just so you can take a moment to appreciate all of our awesome partners. And then, pre-meeting scene setting. Okay. And then on to the agenda.
There we are. Okay, so just an overview of what to expect during this presentation today. We're going to do an overview of our AA21 Utah project programs, talk about the importance of diverse partnerships while building strong relationships, the importance of integrating community engagement strategies, leveraging strengths of different partners, measuring the impact and success of our programs and our participation in the community, and also overcoming those challenges that are bound to happen along the way. And then we'll conclude with a Q&A at the end.
Awesome. All right, so I'm going to run through a super quick background about the AA21 Utah project programs, just to sort of set the scene so you know what we're talking about throughout here. So when this project was first launched in 2021, we knew we wanted to use a research-based approach. And so our first big undertaking was a statewide community needs assessment study. We did a lot of community outreach to recruit participants for the study. Many of you know the particular joys and the agonies of recruiting study participants, but we reached out to over 80 organizations and ended up partnering with over 20 who were committed to help us get the word out. If you're interested in downloading the report, you can scan the QR code and it'll take you right there. Or you can reach out to either of us after the presentation and we'll be happy to send you a PDF of it. But when we talk about the AA21 Utah report, this is what we're talking about. As part of this research study, we looked at several different dimensions of diversity. Eduardo's introduction listed most of them, but I'm just going to run through a couple of the elements here. So approximately half of our respondents identified as adults with autism, self-advocates, and then the other half identified either as, family members in some various dimensions. 10% of our respondents indicated that they had 2 or more relationships with autism as well. The next element is the level of support needed. So considering, just the breadth of the spectrum itself and how much support people need to feel comfortable and to feel like they have access to the community and are able to engage in their lives in the way that they want to. That was one of the key elements. Socioeconomic diversity. This chart shows the average family income, or the income range from our participants. Racial And ethnic diversity was again a key consideration, as well as gender diversity and geographic diversity. So you can see, we had a lot more recruits in the study from the Salt Lake area, but we did get to, some geographical diversity there. And then age diversity as well, in terms of who all is participating. Our study did require all participants to be over the age of 18. So anybody who wanted to participate who wasn't under 18, our IRB did not allow for that. So if you're wondering about that range, that is why. And so that was the dimensions of the diversity that we were really looking at there. Shantel, I'm gonna turn it back over to you.
Okay. Yeah, so here are some percentages, really interesting percentages to take a look at. They're the top unmet needs that were identified by the participants in this study. So as you can see, housing was number one, followed by belonging and friendship, social services, and recreation. So we basically took these findings and began collaborating with partners on how to help solve these problems, which is what currently led us to our programming focus on community engagement. We developed groups called regional working groups, and also neuro-inclusive housing. So ultimately, our main focus here is fostering a sense of belonging and creating meaningful friendships involving understanding, patience, and acceptance, both within the autistic individuals and their broader community as well. It's about creating spaces where differences are celebrated and everyone feels valued in that setting. Okay, so now we have a video. This gives you a short overview of those regional working groups that I was talking about and the process that we go through with those.
In 2021, we started the Autism After 21 Utah project. The goal is to increase inclusion for autistic adults. We partner with other groups and autistic adults across Utah. During the first phase, we started collecting data across the state. Autistic adults, family members, and other Utahns shared their needs in interviews and surveys. This data helps us to see what the biggest needs are. We can also see what barriers are blocking inclusion. Using this data, we can start to come up with strategies. This is where the regional working groups come in. Regional working groups, also called RWGs, are groups of people from the same region. They work together on inclusion strategies. They are volunteers. Each RWG will have subgroups focused on a specific sector, such as housing, employment, or other areas. Ideally, RWGs are made up of autistic adults, family members, local leaders, and others. Anyone who is interested can join an RWG. They talk about the data, ideas for addressing needs, and plans for getting those ideas started. This happens through a series of meetings and online discussions. First, there is an online meeting to introduce RWGs. After the meeting, anyone interested can sign up to join an RWG. They then participate in 3 meetings, either online or in person. For the first meeting, local leaders go to a workshop to learn about the best ways to be inclusive in meetings. Autistic adults and family members go to a session to share their ideas. In the next meetings, RWG members come together to create goals, a plan, and a timeline. Madison House Autism Foundation and partners support the groups by providing data and sharing successful methods. They also help RWGs find groups that could put their plan in motion. Once the RWG creates a plan, they work with groups in their region to track outcomes. This might include checking in with businesses or local centers to get data. Check-ins will depend on who is involved in the plan that you create. After enough data is collected, Madison House and partners will write a report based on what was learned. The report will help others see how well the strategy worked. The work of the RWGs will support thousands of Utahns and families who face daily challenges and barriers to inclusion. They also get a chance to create connections with others and strengthen their network. Overall, RWG members have a chance to spend a little time to make a big difference. In 2020,
Okay. So that the RWGs are the sort of centerpiece of our community engagement program. And then our other main programmatic focus is on housing. So we know that a lot of folks in the development and finance worlds are not even aware that neuro-inclusive housing is a need. And in order for the steps to happen to facilitate building neuro-inclusive housing, we needed data as a state. And this is something that's being worked on by several awesome organizations around the country. So we were really excited to be able to do this in Utah. We formed a coalition of partners, and we're working on a series of detailed regional housing market analyses to get critical data about the community's needs and preferences. So, not just creating buildings, but the right kind of buildings with the right kind of supportive amenities in locations that are walkable, that people can really be engaged in the community. So creating the reports and then also making sure that we get this information in front of the people who need it, in front of the decision makers and in front of, the developers and the finance folks. So each of these regional studies also requires outreach to recruit participants and make sure that we are hearing directly from the community about what they need, what they prefer. And then also more outreach to educate the local decision makers, the local leaders, and make sure they're on board.
Okay, so when talking about the importance of those diverse partnerships, cultivating those diverse partnerships are something that it's immeasurable. We could not do it without that collaboration. It helps nurture a more broad perspective by bringing together different viewpoints, experiences, their expertise, and maybe things that they've experienced as a community member in that region that we haven't, as someone coming in outside of that region as well. This can lead to more innovative solutions and a richer understanding of community needs. So for each study, we made a specific effort to reach diverse populations to participate. This includes all of the different dimensions that we talked about a little bit earlier. And as Sumiko also mentioned, we partnered with over 20 organizations to do this. We reached out to over 80. And in those connections, it was really, really important to make sure that we were addressing things from all aspects. So rather than only doing, independent living centers or transitional living centers, we're also incorporating the economic side of things, the developers, the housing authorities, and then even, the multicultural centers. And specifically in our most recent housing study in Southeast Utah, it was really important that we connected with the Navajo health systems, where there's a great population of Navajo individuals there. And so just knowing what you're walking into and the benefit of that and being able to collaborate with those different individuals is really important in the outreach aspect of things. Okay, so much like a good pizza, there's a lot to be said for sharing resources among partners. Pooling our resources, our knowledge, our networks from various organizations just enhances our outreach initiative. So acknowledging that we might not have all of the answers, but knowing that we've connected and collaborated with so many of these organizations within our communities to be able to send these individuals to the correct organization to get the help that they may need. So some of the things that we look at with this is just expanding our reach when we collaborate like that, leveraging expertise in what we're good at, optimizing our resources, strengthening credibility, enhancing our engagement, and just amplifying advocacy when we're hitting all of those perspectives throughout the community. One example of this that I would like to talk about is, for me as the outreach coordinator, I attend a lot of tabling events. And they may be, an event that's specific to autism, or, something as simple as a farmer's market. And so networking with the community and talking to them and hearing their stories and being able to provide a resource if I don't provide that service, I have that pool of resources that I can then send them to, and vice versa, so that we can help this population in our communities and just expand our reach that way.
One of the other key things for collaborative outreach is, of course, building relationships. This is not something that happens overnight. And a big piece of it is, building trust, building, communication practices between partners. And I'd like to also do an interactive question here. If anybody has other ideas about times that they have felt either really heard, or on the flip side, if you have had an experience where you felt really unheard, what were the communication practices around that? So either unmute or type something in the chat if you've got something to share. But I'd love to hear from y'all about that. And Mindy, I'm not sure, I don't know if I can actually see the chat. Okay, there's the chat. I found it. Sorry, I've got the Zoom presenter view is sort of kind of a monster sometimes. Oh yes, Anna, of course, I'll state the question. I'll put this question in the chat too. But I'd love to hear about a time that you felt either really seen and heard, or on the flip side, really unseen and unheard in a partnership. And then what communication practices led to that?
Well, somebody has to break the ice.
Hey,
Um,
Fernando.
yes. I really enjoyed a partnership I have with the city of Ogden, with the diversity. I'm part of the diversity commission, but the diversity commission affairs person there, and we put together a program called Ogden Citizenship Path. And so I remember coming together and just, hey, by the way, we want to do this, and what ideas we can have, and in a matter of a couple hours, the program was basically, all the details of that. And is that openness to start with a question? Could the city can say, hey, we want to do this, and is this okay? Is the right direction? But just the openness to get really input from partners in the community, for those who are on the field, who are can provide some unique perspective, and to be open to listen, I think is when you can feel seen and you can feel heard. I often make the other mistake, and hopefully not often, that I tend to think about things before, and I come up with a solution even before listening, and I try to avoid to continue doing that. Instead, start with the question, really get somebody else's perspective.
I love that. I am also very guilty of that, and I really appreciate partners who will call me on it. So yeah, amen to that. Thanks, Fernando. Anyone else have an example of a partnership building communication practice, or something that doesn't work well? Chuck?
Not so much as that, but my experience with working, I served as an American Indian education specialist at the Utah State Board of Education. Before this position, I was a principal at Sherman Indian High School in Riverside, California. And this is something to do with accommodations. We played a school. It's a deaf school of California. The accommodations were different. We played in athletics. We played them in football and volleyball. They ran track and field. They did all the activities, but it was the accommodations that was, for me, it was a challenge because I've never seen this. I've never run across anything like this. Even the officials, they have to have that understanding about how to communicate with the deaf community. All the communication, especially on the playing field, was different. Let me give you an example. In football, they had this large drum, and they hit the drum 1 or 2, 3 times, and all of a sudden the play goes. And it catches people off guard because we, from a hearing community, we understand that. It's calling signals, but for the deaf, it's the vibration. And they got to have that drum very, very close to the line of scrimmage. And sometimes they kind of get in the way, but we have to make that adjustment and that accommodation. We even got into volleyball with the girls. And basically, it was basically the same way. The rules are the same, but accommodations were, we have to give that accommodation. So the school where I was at, we have to make all these accommodations for the deaf community, as far as entrance, audience, communication. And now we get into the fields. It's the officials, the accommodations for their dressing rooms. But the game was this, it's the same, the same rules, the same, we have officials on the field, we just like everybody else, and they'll call the game, but the communication was there, it was a little bit different. So for me it was it was a special place to be, because it gave me a different perspective of a community that I really didn't understand. I didn't know anything about them, and when they came to our school, then it kind of opened my eyes for this. Then the second year, I was a little bit more prepared. Third year, I was better. Fourth year, I was good. So I just wanted to share that experience with you guys. So
yeah, awesome. The taking a learning perspective, and one way to build trust, as sort of decentering ourselves and our assumptions, and the things that we think are normal, just sort of questioning that idea of what's normal, opening up our horizons about how to communicate. One thing that I also really like to do is I like to, when I meet a new prospective partner and we're talking about whether we want to work together and it'll be to our mutual benefit, is I like to ask folks how they like to be communicated with. And I like to share my own communication preferences as well. And just really being sort of foregrounding, like, here's what I like, here's what works well for me, and then respecting whatever other partners like and what works well from them. We have a comment from Angela in the chat. My hospital has teamed up with a clinic to offer free wellness classes. And Angela reached out to the program coordinator about creating a safe space for people with diverse abilities and capabilities, sensory-friendly chair yoga on specific dates. And the coordinator liked the idea and said they would consider expanding the program, but not sure if they will follow through. I hope they do follow through, because that would be really, really amazing. So Angela, is that an example of a time that you didn't feel like they were receptive enough in that sort of initial trust building era, and you feel like they might just be sort of like stonewalling and shutting you out? See, I'm not sure where to look for the, maybe a thumbs up or anything. Right, Angela, I don't want to put you too on the spot, but that is being receptive to what partners have to say, and trusting on follow through. That's definitely something that they're going to have to prove on if they are going to be a worthwhile partner and if they are going to follow through. That's probably 90% of strong partnerships. The next specific thing is really focusing on shared goals. And so, you know, making sure that for outreach partnerships, you know, building coalitions is such a tricky thing because everybody comes into it with different experiences, different angles, different needs, different agendas and priorities. And making sure that the coalitions are centered around a shared vision. So in the case of the Autism After 21 Utah project, the shared vision is a world that is neuro-inclusive, not just in Utah, but everywhere. What would it take to build a neuro-inclusive world? And then from there, you know, work on clear goals and really specifics that you can build the partnership around so that you've got accountability to your own organization and to each other within the partnership. Oh, and hey, Angela just posted a follow-up on, I think it might be more of a budget issue. I hope they would offer more free classes all year round. I hope so too. That sounds really awesome. So fingers crossed. We are going to be talking about budget constraints in the overcoming challenges section of the presentation, which I'm sure we are all familiar with beating our heads against that particular brick wall. So with shared goals, really, I have found in my own life that the older I get, the better I am at this, setting aside of my own personal ego to focus on what's going to be best for the partnership and for our shared goals, and to just that practice of saying it's not about me. It's not even just about my organization. It's about what we're trying to build together. All right. Over to Shantel.
So community engagement strategies. This for me is kind of like my bread and butter as an outreach coordinator. Okay. Let's see here. Sumiko, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. Okay, so when looking at inclusive outreach, this is acknowledging the diversity of the community that you're in, looking at all aspects. So we're touching on cultural, racial, socioeconomic, age, geographic. There's so much diversity out there, and just knowing what you're walking into and understanding the community that you're going into to better serve them is really important as well. And then talking about respecting cultural differences in disability perspectives. So we started talking about this a little bit and just acknowledging that different cultures view disability in different ways, and it in no way being a deficit, but just a difference. So some of the interesting information I found when I was looking at this was, you know, being a part of the Western culture, there can be a stigma related to autism, labels, stereotypes. People might have misconceptions about the capabilities and behaviors of individuals with autism, which leads to prejudices and social exclusion just because we don't have that knowledge of this disability. And I wouldn't even call it a disability. I would just call it, you know, the being neurodivergent, having that little bit of difference doesn't mean that it's a deficit by any means. And then looking at some other cultures, the Latino culture, there's a strong emphasis on family unity and fulfilling familial roles. So autism might be seen as a challenge to these expectations, leading to stigma and pressure to conform to traditional roles. So families might face difficulties navigating the support system due to language barriers or their cultural differences. Another one that I found interesting was within the Jewish culture. And some Jewish communities, there might be a focus on community support and achieving certain social or educational milestones. So with that, autism might be viewed through a lens of how it impacts their communal and family expectations. This may lead to potential stigma and challenges in finding acceptance as well. So across all of these contexts, stigma can have significant impacts on autistic individuals and their families, affecting access to services, social inclusion, and overall just quality of life. So addressing these stigmas requires culturally sensitive approaches educating ourselves. If it's a culture that we're not up to par on, or we're not so keen in how they practice, educating ourselves to know what we're walking into and to be able to appreciate their belief. And then also acknowledging the differences without framing them as deficits involves recognizing and respecting the diversity of experiences and practices that shape the individual's lives. Okay. So feedback mechanisms. These are really important as well. Just implementing a pilot project here in Utah and kind of starting grassroots. It's important to have that feedback and what worked and what didn't, because it's not always going to work. Or maybe something we thought wouldn't work as well worked really great within a specific community. So just implementing systems for community feedback, helping us to understand their needs and adjusting strategies accordingly. Also fostering a sense of ownership and involvement in the process. For us specifically, it has, it's a new process and we're learning as we go. And so just taking that all in to just help build this project into what it needs to be, while also acknowledging the different perspectives and the different communities and the different diversity in general. So acknowledging the struggle, educating our community leaders with communicating with self-advocates, knowing that not everyone communicates the same, and being okay with that, being open to having that conversation and not shutting it out just because it's not how you communicate. Creating formal feedback by implementing advisory boards is also another way that we've really tried to incorporate that diverse aspect in our program as well.
Awesome. So, oh, sorry, this one's still Shantel, sorry.
Okay, sorry, one more. Leveraging strengths of different partners. So looking at complementary skills. I love this one because we aren't all going to know everything, and there's no reason for us to have to know it all when we can kind of reach out and collaborate and all come together for that end goal. That's a huge thing, and that touches way more lives than if you're trying to just do it all on your own. So identifying and utilizing those unique strengths and expertise of each partner is huge in a small grassroots project like what we're trying to do. For example, community organization might provide local knowledge and connections, whereas you have a more corporate partner and they're more knowledgeable about funding and logistical efforts, both of which are so important, especially for us where we are a nonprofit, coming in from the community, but also making those partnerships with funding and whatnot. That's how we keep our program alive. So just recognizing that we need to engage them both in the conversation, and the importance is equal. Also approaching potential partners to do community outreach and then building an intentional list. So just when choosing who to incorporate or who to talk to, how to communicate, just being very intentional about our work and what our end goal is, and always keeping that in the forefront of our mind.
Awesome. So the next thing we wanted to talk about is in terms of these collaborative diverse outreach efforts, measuring impact and success. The way that we conceptualize measuring impact can have such a profound effect on how we build our programs and the choices that we make throughout. And so this is one of those things that I like to really nerd out about and encourage people to think about, really dig into this right up front early on in partnerships and coalitions. What does success mean to different people in the partnership? Are we all thinking about just clarifying terms, like, are we thinking about diversity in the same ways? Are we making sure we are casting a broad enough net? And looking at that in terms of both qualitative and quantitative data points, and thinking also about, are we trying to measure outputs such as, things like number of people who attended an event, or are we trying to make an argument for measuring outcomes in terms of changes in our actual world and the way that people are able to navigate it. So that might be more like, we could have maybe 20 mayors come to this learning session, and then the outcome, that would be the output. And then the outcome would be more in terms of, 15 out of the 20 towns whose mayors attended implemented more inclusive language in XYZ policies. And so that would actually be, an outcome, a change in sort of the shape and fabric of our real world. So one other thing I want to say here is compare your parameters carefully. So this was sort of an interesting reality check for our team. The first regional housing study that we've done under this project was in the Salt Lake Valley, right? So very populous, urban, suburban primarily. And we had almost 400 people participate in the study, which we were just like super excited about. And then the next study that we did was in Southeastern Europe, Southeastern Utah, the 5-county area of Carbon, Emery, Grand, San Juan, and Wayne counties. So just vastly different geography, vastly different sort of daily lived experience for a lot of folks in that area. And vastly different outreach parameters as well. In the Salt Lake Valley, our outreach there were so many events to go to. There were already established ways to connect with the community. And in Southeastern Utah, the outreach that we did for that, because of our, very real budget and travel constraints, we weren't able to be physically present in all 5 of those counties all the time. And so we worked a lot with partners and things like that. And we were sort of beating ourselves up about like, oh my gosh, we're having such a hard time getting people to participate in this. And then we ran the numbers, and as it turns out, our per capita participation rate was actually better in Southeastern Utah than it was in the Salt Lake Valley. So this is like Sumiko's PSA for make sure you're comparing apples to apples and not kiwis. Because, if it had gone the other way, it could have also informed us on what we need to do better. But really, in terms of evaluation metrics, consider carefully what you are evaluating and comparing, because that can be really informative. All right. Overcoming challenges. Back to you, Shantel.
Okay. So this just kind of ties into what Sumiko was just talking about, right? Like as a nonprofit, we have resource constraints. We'll always have resource constraints. And so this is where our collaborations and our connections with the community are so vital to the livelihood of our program in general, and maintaining, just having that sustainability by connecting with the communities. So when looking at this budget, staffing, and how diverse even, our staff is, on a limited budget, you have maybe one person in northern, one person in southern Utah, and that's the extent of it. And so maybe they don't speak another language, they're not bilingual. They don't have the experiences of living in a rural community. And so those things are all things that if we can find that appropriate community connection, then we can kind of address all of those things. And they're not so much of a challenge when we can connect and kind of utilize those resources to both of our advantages. And so one thing I would say here is down in southern Utah, where I'm located, my Center for Independent Living is wonderful, and they have so many connections and resources already, and they're so open, knowing that we have that same end goal of just inclusivity in our communities. They're open to, opening up their classrooms for me. They're bringing in the people that they know and the individuals that participate in their programs to also be a part of what we're trying to do down here as well. So just really honing in on that relationship and nurturing that so that you can both benefit each other where you have the same end goal. Also, travel is another big one when you have the budget constraints. So trying to get out to Southeast Utah to do the housing analysis was tricky as well. And so really making sure that we network with the communities, whether it's through digital outreach, which is also more accessible for a lot of people, or just partnering with those local organizations and making ourselves known, and also learning about their programs and their organizations so that we can collaborate and help each other was a huge part of just addressing the resource constraints and finding ways around them, because it's going to be there regardless, but they're, finding someone who may have something that you don't, and, vice versa, and just helping supplement someone else's program for that mutual benefit is wonderful. I can't stress that enough. So.
Yeah. Amen to that. All right. In conclusion, this is really hard, but it's really, really important. This project, the A21 Utah project, like so many of the things that I know that you are working on, our challenge in many ways is that we're trying to build a world that hasn't existed. And it's really tricky to build coalition around that when there aren't as many reference points or examples of successful times that it's been done. But building diverse partnerships and making sure that as we are building towards a better world for everyone, putting in that legwork, putting in the trust building and the relationship building, and being open ourselves to being changed by the communities and the partnerships and the things that we learn is really, really just good and life-changing. I'm getting a little bit teary-eyed thinking about it. So I'm going to wrap this up by saying thank you all so much for being here and for participating with your comments. And I know we've got some time as well for questions and answers.
You guys can feel free to type in or unmute yourself, whatever works best.
Well, I'll type in. I love this so much. Hi, Sumiko. Shantel and Sumiko, thank you for your expertise. And also thank you for asking us questions. I learned a lot also from Fernando and from Dr. Foster. Those are really interesting. And from, I think, Angela as well. So really great presentation. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And yes, also thank you to the folks who spoke up, Fernando, Chuck, Angela. It's always really fun to hear other people's perspective. And again, part of that building a community, if we're going to be a community of practice, then listening is foundational. I see a couple of comments in. Angela, getting a grant is one of the many ways we can overcome challenges. Yes. Oh my gosh. And while fundraising is, I probably shouldn't say the eternal headache, but I'm going to say it. It's awesome if we can form partnerships in ways that let us tackle these things together, like providing. I've written so many letters of support for partners who are applying for grants. And I have had so many of our partners be willing to give us letters of support when we're applying for grants. And so that sort of, interwoven approach is really, really valuable. Both sort of in terms of emotional support of applying for grants, and then also actually valuable in terms of successful grant applications. A lot of donors really do like to see partnership approaches. Any other questions or comments? I see Jessica had a question about more information about MoldiNet. Yay! I'm guessing Mindy is probably already all over that. I also do want to pop up, just in case anybody has to duck out in the next few minutes, our contact info. So if anybody has questions that occur to them later, that's always me. I'm terrible at thinking of questions on the spot. They come to me, you know, tomorrow morning while I'm drinking coffee, and then I'm like, dang it, I need to ask that. So if you have questions that come to you later, please do reach out to us. We would love to answer questions or discuss things, any of that.
Hey, I also just posted our survey for everyone that should be popping up on everybody's screens. If you could answer those questions for us, that would be awesome. The responses that we get from this inform, like, for our funding for the project, to show that we're actually learning things together. So if you could answer those, that would be awesome. And yeah, I saw, who was that? Jessica, talking about the network. Thank you so much for being here today, Jessica, and everybody else on the call. I will post the link to our website again. And if you want to keep coming, you can invite all your friends, invite all your colleagues. Everybody's welcome to come learn with us. We have these monthly meetings every month, and then we also have other educational content on our website. So give me a sec, I will post that link. And yeah, if anybody else has any other questions, we have just a few more minutes. What an awesome presentation, you guys. Thank you so much. I learned so much. Yeah, I'll stop talking. So if anybody else has anything to say.
Thank you. Thank you for a great presentation, Sumiko and Shantel. I have a question, actually. Because of your success and you know, these collaborative efforts, I think our approach with your program is an example of that, when we find common goals. But do you have any insights to make it self-sustained over time? Because, you know, sometimes those efforts are ongoing and it takes time. How we keep alive those collaborative efforts?
Yeah, that is definitely tricky, and I don't want to pretend that we have the answer to that at all. We're very much in the messy middle of figuring it out. So one of our ideas with the regional working groups is to essentially create, so, you know, business schools, I'm going to detour to a metaphor here. Business schools often have startup incubators where somebody who has an idea for a new business can get lots of intensive support and education and training and resources in the early phases where it's really sort of make or break. And the idea is not that those all will be available throughout the entire life of the business, but the idea is that those resources are available up front, and then eventually the business will go on and become self-sufficient and live its own life. So our idea was essentially to take that sort of model and see if it's possible to do that with community engagement groups. So our regional working groups are basically an incubator for grassroots community involvement. And we provide, you know, we provide training, we provide structure, we facilitate meetings, we have resources, and we connect people with the right folks in the communities and sort of create an incubator for this to start to take shape, with the eventual goal that these community engagement groups can have a life of their own that's not dependent on an organization. You know, again, we're a nonprofit. And so something that's not necessarily going to be dependent on Madison House and the Autism After 21 Utah project for perpetuity, but that they can take the skills that they learn and really shape that in And so far, the process has been really cool and unexpected ways. So I don't know if that really answers your question. Shantel, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would say going along those same lines and what we're doing currently with our regional working groups up in Salt Lake. Specifically, there's a group that's working on transportation and they came together. So we have our regional working group and then we have our little subgroups, right? And so one is for transportation and they've talked about how frustrating the accessibility is to get on and off the tracks. And so Mary, she's our Northern Utah outreach coordinator. She helped connect this subgroup to the tracks system and to their, the person who kind of runs all of their communication. And so she helped facilitate their meeting with the transportation services and to bring their ideas as someone who needs those accommodations or a better accessibility to utilize that transportation system. And so they're connected now. And so now if the program was to not exist tomorrow, they've still made that connection and they've still learned those strategies and that communication, those tools. They can kind of take that toolkit with them and implement that into their community, and whatever they see needs help or they want to do something different, they now can take that and know, okay, here's our steps, let's lay this out, what do we need to do next? And so that makes those decisions and those opportunities more sustainable because it's really just taking that initial blueprint and then being able to implement it where you see fit. And I think that's been the most amazing part, watching our regional working groups and watching them determine this is what we see is lacking. This is what we would love to see more of. And then helping facilitate those interactions so they can go out. Not as, you know, the AA 21 project or anything. They're going out as that coalition to go and advocate for themselves and show them how much this is needed and the reasons why. And that's a really beautiful thing, I think. And that in itself shows the sustainability of those different programs that they're trying to help influence.
Yeah. That's such a good question.
I think so too.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Brenda. All right, cool. I know we're almost at time. Ooh, let's see, I just saw one new message. Oh, Fernando, that's a great question. Yes, let's follow up.
Definitely. And we're going to be starting more regional working groups too. We have one up and running and, you know, that's something that's in the future as well. So the individuals that come in, they get to determine what their interest is and where they want to put their time. So that would be wonderful. That would be great.
Yeah. I'm going to add emails to the chat here because that would be an awesome thing to collaborate on. Yay! Very cool. All right. Mindy, back to you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for your participation. I think we've had some really good discussion and gosh, I feel empowered. We can go conquer the world now. I love what you said, Sumiko, about we're trying to create a world that hasn't existed yet. And that's so true. And it's so hard. It takes a lot of work and effort, but so worth it. I think to consider having a world where everybody feels included and feels like they belong and has access to everything that they need, and what a worthy goal it is. So we'll get there. But thank you all so much. If you haven't finished filling out a survey I sent out, please do that before you leave. And also, if you haven't checked our website, we it's not updated quite yet because we just finished this one, but we will have more events coming up, learning opportunities that are free and are insightful and always open for discussion. So please join us. We'll have another one of these next month around the same time. I think it's the 17th, but I'm not sure. But I'll be sending out information soon with that. So anyway, thank you for being here. Come back again soon. Thank you both for your presentation.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.